Hello, this is very much an experiment. I'm trying out, moving my mic, so that probably made some interesting noise. I'm trying out reading tarot, with distance reading. I've done a little reading in person. I have a big collection of tarot cards. I have about 19 decks, which is ridiculous. I tend to use them just kind of for meditation. I'm gonna move some keys so that's gonna be noisy. There we go. And not for really officially for reading, really. But I'd like to try to get some practice reading. My personal philosophy on tarot is pretty similar to a lot of people's, I think, in that I don't see it as predicting the future. I see it as giving you something to think about. It's just a bunch of symbols that, they have an evocative meaning, and that they make you, think about whatever question you ask. It just kind of makes you consider it. Now, this is just kind of a reading that I've made up. It doesn't have a particular way of having things set up, and it's not official. It's not like one of the established ways of laying out tarot cards. This is just me making things up. The querent asks about kind of what do they have to look forward to in the future? What are they looking towards in the future? And so I just kind of went with that. I thought it would be interesting, too, to compare cards across the decks. So I already pulled the cards, and then I pulled from the deck that the reader asked for, which is I believe the Fey Tarot. I don't always have the little white books for all of these still, so I don't always remember the official names, but I believe it's the Fey Tarot. I think it's a Lo Scarabeo deck. And then from the Universal Rider-Waite, which the Rider-Waite, if you know tarot, is the kind of the grandmother of modern decks. Not necessarily of tarot overall, but of kind of the modern deck interpretations. So I decided to compare the two, which I thought would be interesting for people. So let's draw the first card. The first question I thought would be interesting if you're talking about the future is, what are you moving from? What kind of position are you in at the present? And for that card, we drew, let me see if I can get a good angle on it, the Nine of Wands. You can see here on this card, the nine shows two kind of fairy spirits in a hole in a tree and a hollow in a tree, they're kind of looking like they're looking for danger, looking out for something that might be coming, and that's in keeping with the Rider-Waite, which shows this dude. He's looking also quite defensive. He has his arms up. He has his stick at the ready. He's defending. It looks like he's either built a defensive wall behind him, or he's ready to defend the sticks, or both. In any case, the nine kind of shows this defensive figure. There's a connotation sometimes people think of strength, but I kind of focus on the defensive aspect. So it kind of suggests that where the querent is right now, where you are right now, is somewhere where you're kind of, let me put them both side by side if I can get them close enough to the camera, where you're kind of defensive, you're kind of holding your ground. You've got something that you've invested in, you have a home, you have a project, you have a position, a job, or something that you've invested in and that you feel like it's worth defending. But you're also at a point where that might be causing you to just focus constantly on defense, on being defensive, on maintaining that status quo, on maintaining that thing that you built, or that place that you are. So that may be where you are right now, in that defensive state where you've built something and your entire focus is on maintaining it and on keeping it in good shape. So that's where you are right now. I'm going to put those down. And the next question I thought would be interesting would be, what are you moving towards? What are you going towards in your life? So you're moving from this posture of defense to what? Whoops, and you'll notice that I don't actually pay attention to reversed. I feel like that's just kind of muddies the waters. And usually people tend to interpret reverse things as negative, and I don't really like that. So for what are you moving towards, we've got the Knave of Chalices, and you have the spirit looking down into a cup with a fish in it. A fish. And then you have the equivalent, which is the Page of Cups in the Rider-Waite. And you can see the similarities right off. I don't know if you can see it's fishy. He has a fishy. He's holding a cup, and it looks like he's having a conversation with the fish. I like this card. I mean, if I had a fish show up in a cup, I'd have a conversation with it. And there's also, I don't know if you know the stories where about talking fish granting you wishes, but there are a bunch of fairy tales about that kind of idea. So he's got his cup, and I can't really get it to focus, but he's talking to his fish, and he's the page. So he's kind of, a page is kind of a fresh perspective, a fresh spirit. There's a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, kind of. It's the cups are all about emotion, about this kind of the kind of energy of the cup. Let's see, I lost my track there. But the cups are really about emotion. They're about feelings. They're about intuition. That's that particular suit has that emphasis. So the Page of Cups would be somebody who's really, they're really intuitive. They're really creative. They're looking at new ideas, looking at imagination. They're not jaded yet. So this is what kind of the idea of what you're moving towards, is this place where you're ready to begin a new imaginative work, where you're really ready to look at your intuition, to look at your creativity. And the current, at least, is at part of the time an artist. I don't know if it's spare time or work. But so this seems like a particularly relevant card. So you're moving towards a period of kind of the ability to have fresh eyes for your creativity. You may be looking at a partner, working with somebody who's also kind of young and fresh and ready to explore a new idea. So there's this idea of moving from a defensive place with an established project, an established position or job, to this perspective where you're ready to look at new creative ideas. So let's look at the next one. The question I chose there was what will help you reach this state, this Page of Cups state. And we got the Five of Chalices. So we've got another chalice card. And you can see here the figure is in, there we go, popped into focus. The figure is a little fairy figure in a broken cup with a castle behind them. And that continues some of the symbolism of the Rider, Five of Cups, which is it's not a happy looking image. You've got this figure who's, kind of almost dressed in mourning, turning away from two cups that are still standing up and three that have fallen over and their contents have drained out. And again, you have this castle in the background, so you can see the castle in the background in both. And that idea of something fractured and lost. So it seems like this would be like, how would that help you? How would this sense of having something be incomplete, something lost, help you move forward? But I think in that case, there's, if you've got this project that you're feeling really that you've really got established and feeling like a project or place or a relationship or something that you really feel that you need to, defend, that you've built up, you may reach a point where you realize that something about it is incomplete. Like it's not quite fulfilling you. Maybe there's a gap in it that you just can't fill. It's never going to be this perfect thing that you build up the defense for. So realizing that, maybe realizing that it's time to move on, that it's time to pick a new project, or that this project will never fulfill you quite in the way that you thought, or that it's just time to move on, while you still have something that remains. Those cups that are still standing up. It's kind of a good idea. It's a supportive card in that way. It's saying, look at what you have, see if it's really what you want. If there are gaps, if there are things that you can salvage, then take one of both of those things and consider moving towards that castle in the background. And then I chose what will you have to overcome as the next question. And I can pick cards up, I swear. For that, you get the Four of Swords. The Four of Swords is like this. Let's look at the one here first. So you have this figure, this is kind of an odd one compared to the Four of Swords in a Rider-Waite. You have this idea of a fairy figure putting on almost like battle paint, looking like they're ready to go to war, kind of, which is interesting. My computer's going to decide to shut down, so let's hope it's still filming. I think it is. I'll have to remember to hit the mouse occasionally. But, so that's kind of an odd interpretation of the Rider-Waite, actually, because you can look at the Rider-Waite, Four of Swords, is a guy who's, you can interpret him as either a living person or an effigy. In this case, the author, the person who colorized it, went with the idea of an effigy on a tomb, kind of at rest or in meditation. So there's this idea that someone is either you have a forced time of contemplation, time of isolation, time of convalescence upon you, or you're choosing to have that. And I suppose you could say that with the Four of Swords here, it's somebody preparing for something, kind of that withdrawal to prepare, and it kind of gets the energy of the swords, which is often kind of a sharp, active, often kind of painful energy for swords. But if you're looking at what do you have to overcome, it looks like then this case, I would say, was a sense of isolation. To move forward to that new project, that new thing, you're going to have to overcome the sense of wanting to isolate, of wanting to stay in a contemplative state, of wanting to maybe think about it too long. You may also feel like you're in a position where you have to do that, where you have to take some time for your health or for your mental health, physical health, whatever, to stay in that state of contemplation or isolation. And that's a completely legitimate thing, but it may also be kind of a stumbling block, something that's a little tough for getting to that new place, that new project. So that's the what is there to overcome. And then I wanted to look at kind of positive things in the end. So what would be your reward for getting through this progress, for getting to this point in the future? And for that, I played the Eight of Wands. You can see the Rider-Waite and the Fey. In the Fey, you can see it's a figure who is, kind of looks like she's rushing. It's hard to tell from her expression. You can't really get it to focus here, but it almost looks like something's it's really torn between something's chasing her or she's doing it for fun. It could be kind of either way. But she's running through at a fast speed through these branches, through these wands. So that's Fey Tarot's interpretation of that. And then you have the Rider-Waite, which is really straightforward. It's some sticks. And it looks like the sticks are like kind of you can see the castle in the background that's in a lot of the cards. It looks like these sticks are kind of rushing towards the goal, like they've been thrown through the air, or propelled through the air just on their own. So this is a card of swiftness, obviously, of completion, of reaching your goal quickly and promptly, with as directly as possible. So the idea here, I think, is that you're moving from this defensive kind of stagnant position towards a creative project, something new, something interesting, or at least a new idea. Possibly a project working with someone who has good creative energy, good emotional energy, and to get there, you're going to have to recognize that there's something with that original project that's a little lacking, that maybe where you are right now doesn't quite have everything you need, but it has things you can take with you, but it in itself is kind of finished, it's kind of ready to move away from a little bit. And you've lost something in it. Maybe you do have had a recent kind of loss of faith in it, a loss of emotional investment, a loss of a relationship surrounded with it, but you're ready to move on, and you have to recognize that. And to do that, to move on like that, you'll have to overcome a time of isolation, and a tendency to self-isolate, to feel like you need to recover or convalesce. And your reward will be being able to finally move swiftly towards that new goal. Kind of move with confidence and move with the certainty that you will be able to reach it in a direct and swift and timely manner. So I think that's the reading for this one, for the question of what do you kind of looking towards in the future. I hope that was interesting. I know the focus on these isn't so great, but I think the comparison of cards with the Rider-Waite is always interesting. You can see how they are how the authors have chosen, the artists have chosen to reinterpret them. This is probably the most unusual, the Four of Swords there. The others are pretty directly related. But I think that comparison is always interesting, and I hope that you found it interesting. I may do more of these. As I said, you can probably tell from me being kind of nervous, and from my saying a lot. I'm rather new to reading for other people, although I know the cards pretty well. And it's a little nerve-wracking, but hopefully with some practice I will get better at it. So there you go, that's my first attempt at reading via video, long distance. Später, thank you.